Ben and Brittany, thank you for all you've already invested in Riverwood and into being those people of character and ministry impact, and welcome to the team of Riverwood pastors. Okay, everyone else, I need you to think for a moment about your nomination for the best Christmas movie ever. If you're with somebody, I'm going to give you a moment to turn to them and tell them what movie you're voting for. Go for it right now. Okay, well, it is obvious that we all have different tastes in Christmas movies, but the greatest Christmas movie ever, at least in my opinion, has got to be Elf. In this 2003 Will Ferrell classic, Buddy the Elf accidentally ends up in the North Pole as a baby. And he grows up thinking that he is an elf, until one day he discovers he's not an elf, and he doesn't actually belong in the North Pole. Buddy learns that the place he has known his whole life, the only place he has ever lived, isn't actually home, but rather a place he's never seen and can hardly imagine is his real home. So Buddy the Elf leaves the North Pole in search of his father, a father that he has never met, and his real home. And hidden behind this feel-good Christmas movie with its hilarious antics, classic one-liners, and endearing character development is this trippy little thought. What if the only place we've ever lived and the place we've spent our whole lives isn't actually our home, but our real home is someplace we've never been but have only heard of? Well, welcome to our third weekend of Home for Christmas. Our series is going to wrap up on Christmas Eve. So over the last few weeks of our Home for Christmas series, we've been looking at this powerful and intrinsic link that the idea of Christmas and home seem to have. And we've been on a search for the meaning of home, a theology of home, and a better understanding of why home is so important to us. Over these weeks, I've been telling you the Christmas story like you've never heard it before. In week 1, we heard Jesus tell the Christmas story from Luke chapter 15, a story about a spoiled and demanding son, a gracious and forgiving father, and an older brother with his nose bent out of joint. And I gave you some homework. I gave you a homework assignment, and it was to be the father in the story, to anticipate the arrival of those coming home, and to show ridiculous amounts of favor and blessing and second chances. We said those are the powerful elements of home: excited expectation, unexpected favor and blessing, and generously distributed second chances. Then last weekend we sat and listened to Dr. Luke as he told the Christmas story of Paul and Silas and the doomed jailer in Acts chapter 16. Now admittedly, there was no donkey or shepherds, wise men, or star over the stable in Bethlehem, and yet I showed you 5 elements that prove to me anyway that this is a real Christmas story. And I assigned more homework. Make your home a place where wounds are bandaged and healed. Be on the lookout for wounds, some of them internal injuries, that those in your home carry with them, and begin to bandage them. This is what makes home irresistible and one of the most sought-after experiences, when we can reveal our wounds and trust that others will actually help heal them. Now, I realize that many of us would say, that's not my experience. Everyone in my home is glued to their screens and devices and don't even know when I come home. No one's waiting at the window or the door excited to see me. I feel like I have to recite my failures over and over and over again and grovel in hopes of maybe getting a second chance and blessing, and I've learned to hide my vulnerabilities and wounds. In our house, people prey on them rather than heal them. Hey, I get it. Sometimes home is the last place you want to be, or is actually incredibly unhealthy. But my encouragement and my challenge is that you can be the one who turns that around. But it will take more than just a turkey or some gifts and some forced family time once a year to turn a house into an irresistible home where people can't wait to come into and feel the most loved and the most safe and the most free and the most not judged. It takes a lot of intentionality and all year round work. But you be the one to champion that. You be the one with the vision and the guts to embark on this adventurous journey towards home. Which brings us back to Buddy the Elf. One of the reasons the movie Elf was so unique was that instead of someone in our world searching for and trying to get to this fantasy land utopia of the North Pole and Santa's workshop, we were watching someone living in the fantasy land of the North Pole, realizing he didn't belong, and there was more, and asking himself, who am I? And where do I really belong? And where is home? Now, those are not the typical questions people are asking this time of year, are they? But they are questions that bore down to the heart of Christmas more than any questions about what do you want for Christmas or what day should we invite the family over. In fact, Buddy the Elf may have nailed it with this idea of who am I, where do I really belong, and where is home? Now, it's almost like God knew that we would often forget who we are and where we belong and where home is, because he reminds us so often and so clearly. Listen to these words from 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 11. Friends, this world is not your home, so don't make yourself cozy in it. And again, in Philippians 3:19, some people think only about this life here on earth, but we are citizens of heaven, where the Lord Jesus Christ lives, and we are eagerly waiting for him to return as our Savior. And as if that wasn't clear enough, speaking to people who live by faith, Hebrews 11:13 says they accepted the fact that they were transients, strangers, exiles in this world. People who live this way make it plain that they are looking for their true home. If they were homesick for the old country, they would come back to the world anytime they wanted. But they are after a far better country than that, heaven country. For 30 plus years, Buddy the Elf knew nothing but the world of the North Pole and elves. He thought he was one of them. He identified as an elf. He thought like an elf, he ate like an elf, he worked like an elf, and that was the only life in existence he knew. Then one day, a light bulb went on. Papa Elf, played by Bob Newhart, sat Buddy down, or rather, Buddy sat on him, and Papa Elf explained the whole story. And that's when Buddy realized he wasn't actually from there. His citizenship was somewhere else. He belonged somewhere else. His home was somewhere else, and his epic adventure began. Well, Christmas is a little like that conversation between Papa Elf and Buddy. It's the moment Jesus Christ, God's own Son, breaks into our world to deliver a message, and this is the message. This isn't your home. You're here, but you were made for so much more than 60, 70, 80, 90 years slugging it out on this earth. In this world, you're like me, Jesus says. You're a visitor, a transient, a stranger, an exile, journeying through this life, but your true home is somewhere else. Your citizenship is in heaven. You know, it's easy to think that Jesus came to star as the miracle baby in a manger, born to a virgin, wrapped in swaddling cloths. That was absolutely the strategy or the method, but it's most certainly not the message. A few chapters after the story of his arrival, we hear grown-up Jesus saying these words in John chapter 14. Don't let this rattle you. You trust God, don't you? Trust me. There is plenty of room for you in my Father's home. If that weren't so, would I have told you that I am on my way to get a room ready for you? And if I'm on my way to get your room ready, I'll come back and get you so that you can live where I live. And it's interesting. In the movie, Buddy goes through the same emotions that someone reading these verses for the first time might experience. This is kind of scary. I thought this world was all there was. This is where I'm comfortable and familiar, and this is the world I understand and am accustomed to. I think I might just be okay here forever. It's not perfect, but it's what I know. You know, sometimes I find myself thinking those thoughts. God, I love my family and my church. This world can be a tough place to live sometimes, but fishing on Lake of the Woods, or driving through the Rockies, or cross-country skiing at Bird's Hill, or standing on the rim of the Grand Canyon is absolutely glorious, and it fills me with so much joy and wonder. I like my house, and my shop, and I love working on my projects, and there is nothing like a gathering with festive food and deep, honoring, valued relationships. Why, God, would I ever want to leave all this for what? This is my home. So when God says, actually, you're just a visitor here, and you weren't made for this world, and this world isn't your home, it's sort of a bit freaky, isn't it? So do you know what helps me? Remembering the birth of my daughters. When each of our daughters were born, Carolyn and I were over the moon. But the first time was certainly the most freaky and crazy and world-altering. For months, Carolyn and I watched as this little mystery child grew inside Carolyn's body. We didn't know who this kid was or would be, and if it was a she or a he, so we nicknamed it Baby Schmaybe. And when Baby Schmaybe got big enough to alter Carolyn's shape and started bulging her clothes, we knew it was time to get ready. So we set out to prepare a place for Baby Schmaybe. And did we ever go to work? We removed all the fixtures, the blinds, the lights. Then we fixed the holes in the walls. We went shopping for new curtains, new lighting, special wallpaper with a fancy border. We painted, we cleaned the carpets, we bought new furniture for the room. And one day, a couple of weeks before our precious baby was born, the room we had prepared was ready. Now, we knew this room we had prepared would just be the first of many spaces our baby would discover and explore and fill. We knew that there would be a whole wonderful world of zoo animals and toboggan slides and swimming lakes and camping spots and airports and other entire continents to investigate, with airplanes and roller coasters and crocodiles and palm trees and mountain hikes. But we knew that this room we had prepared would be her first place in this world, and we just wanted to make it right. And then the day of her arrival finally came. It was time for Baby Schmaybe to move from her little world into the real world. Only she refused. She began sending messages out to us. "I'm not coming out." We replied, "But we spent the last few months preparing a room for you." She said, "I like it here. This is my home. This place is real. I'm comfortable here. I have everything I need. You say you're my father, but I don't even know if you're real. Sometimes you're there and I can hear you, sometimes I can't. I'm not coming out." Carolyn tried to persuade her, "But sweetheart, you weren't meant to live in the womb your whole life. You were made for so much more than that." Baby Schmaybe said, "Look, I've heard about the end and how I'll travel through a dark tunnel and I'll see a bright light and there will be excited voices welcoming me. But I'm telling you, I'm not interested. I'm quite happy in here. Besides, I don't believe there's actually an afterlife. I think what you see is what you get, and then it just ends." I tried. "But sweetie, your 9 months in the womb is nothing compared to the 70, 80, 90 years you'll have in this world, and you'll love it. This is a world full of color and movement and sounds and smells, glorious sunsets, and sweep you off your feet romance." "Nope, I don't believe in color or movement, and I certainly don't believe in sunsets. Never seen one. That's just somebody's overactive imagination. Besides, I've heard that people in that world, all they do is breathe air, eat, poop, and sleep." With a chuckle, Carolyn said, "Oh, sweetheart, it's true. We do breathe a lot of air and eat and poop and sleep. But it's wonderful, and that's only the beginning. We don't even have words to describe what you will experience if you leave the womb and join us in this world." I tried logic. "Baby Schmaybe, I prefer to be called Amy," the voice said. "Okay, Amy, beloved, you weren't created for the womb. You were created for this amazing existence. I'm sure it's incredibly hard to imagine and even a bit scary, but you're living in a dark, cramped, restrictive, limiting world that is designed to simply get you ready for your real life. So what do you say? Come meet us face to face and discover who you were really meant to be." Well, 11 days late, and after being induced, Amy finally transitioned to the real world. And today, She's a 30-year-old, beautiful, married teacher who never thinks once about returning to her previous life in the womb. Church, that's what heaven is like. This world is the womb. It's dark, cramped, restrictive, limiting, and simply the world that is designed to get you ready for your real life. But it's also the only world we've ever known. So all of this talk about going to prepare a room, a mansion for you, and promises of a glassy sea or streets paved with gold or God's throne where we'll worship, and it being an unimaginable place where there's no pain, no sickness, no violence, no sin, and nothing but the unlimited, ever-expanding creative power of God at work simply doesn't make sense and even seems a bit scary. But if Christmas is anything, it's Jesus joining us in our womb world and saying, hey, I'm here to show you the way out, the way to what you were really meant for. Follow me. Hang on tight, because I've gone ahead of you and prepared a place for you. And it is going to blow your mind. You have no frame of reference or words to describe what it's like. So I'll just use these words. It's the home your soul craves. Friends, this world is not your home, so don't make yourself cozy in it. But we are citizens of heaven, transient strangers and exiles in this world. People who live this way make it plain that they are looking for their true home. I love the fact that Buddy the Elf didn't settle for comfort or living in the only world he was familiar with, but went on to an adventure to discover the unseen world of his real home. And that, in fact, is what God calls each of us to do. Last year, one of our daughters and her new husband decided that they were ready to buy a house. This meant that the two sets of parents were suddenly thrust back into the housing market and became very busy viewing and inspecting and scrutinizing each potential property. It often started with a simple real estate listing that we needed to read and decipher. And we quickly learned that the real estate market uses code words. For instance, we would get really excited about a property that was listed as classic vintage, only to discover that that meant it was ridiculously out of date and lacked any sense of style. Natural landscaping was code for unmowed jungle lawn. If it was a custom home, that often meant an amateur handyman had given it the old college try and it didn't quite work out. Cozy and charming often means small, and rather than meaning hip or fun, a listing that says eclectic means odd, disorganized, and a mismatch of unrelated features. You'll love it probably means you won't, and if the house was listed as fantastic, it often meant the agent just didn't have any other words, so they just used this umbrella word, fantastic, because it's as good as any. Now, if you're a real estate agent, realize I'm just having a bit of fun. The fact is that most listings were pretty accurate, and they ended up finding a fantastic, charming, cozy place that was just perfect for them. But does the Bible use the same code word system to apply to heaven? Actually, if what the Bible says is true, that our life here on earth is like 0.001% of our total existence, that this life is the womb compared to the rest of life, and that the home we're talking about that God has created for us, we're going to spend like 99.9% of our existence there. Well, in that case, the Bible is pretty descriptive. So I'd love to spend a few minutes just kind of peeking behind the curtain and take a quick tour of our forever home that is our eternal hope. Now, if there is one place in the Bible to turn to when you want to know more about heaven, it's got to be John's book of Revelation, which could actually be called the Welcome Home book. When the Apostle John was given the opportunity to peek into the future and describe it, he does his best to describe what he sees, and his words will steal your breath. Listen to his description from the second last chapter of the entire Bible, Revelation chapter 21. Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth, for the old heaven and the old earth had disappeared, and the sea was also gone. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven like a bride beautifully dressed for her husband. I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, "Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. He will wipe away their tears from their eyes. There will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever. And the one sitting on the throne said, "Look, I am making everything new." And then he said to me, "Write this down, for what I tell you is trustworthy and true." And he also said, "It is finished. I am the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end. To all who are thirsty, I will give freely from the springs of the water of life. All who are victorious will inherit all these blessings, and I will be their God, and they will be my children." So if this is God's real estate news ad for heaven, what does it mean? Are these code words? And if they are, what do they really tell us? Number one, it's brand new. You know, at the beginning of time, in Genesis, the beginning of the book started with God creating. And at the end of time, at the end of the book, it ends with God creating. In other words, this ending is only just the beginning of the next adventure. We often think of someone who has passed away as the end. But for those who have put their life and faith in God, it's only just the beginning. And it's like nothing you have ever seen or imagined. It's brand new. Number two, it's barrier-free. As I was studying this passage, I was curious about the phrase, "and the sea was also gone." My first thought was, that doesn't sound very appealing. I love the sea, and it sounds kind of sad. But then I discovered that in Revelation imagery, the sea represents separation. The sea is dark, stormy, foreboding, and impossible. The sea in Bible language represents destruction and evil. It's where men go to die. It swallows ships and sailors, and it's what separates us from home. But in this passage, John says he noticed something. The sea was also gone. The separation between people and God had been removed. Number three, it's stunning and beautifully prepared. You know, in the last number of years, a wedding moment or tradition has become more popular called the first look. And in my case anyway, the first look wasn't only for the groom, but as a dad, I got to have a first look. Two of our daughters were married 28 days apart during the summer of 2020. And twice I was told where to stand, what direction to look, and then a bunch of ladies got busy and brought out my daughter standing behind me. They worked the last strands of hair into place, straightened the dress, then stood back, and I was instructed to turn around. It's a moment that almost shouldn't be allowed. It's simply too overwhelming. It's too much beauty and splendor and rushing emotion to take in a few mere seconds. It's an absolute shock to the system. 1 minute, you're teaching her to walk or ride a bike or carrying her on your shoulders through the zoo, and then the next minute, she is this stunning, gorgeous young woman dressed in white, and you have trouble breathing. Well, that's what John says will be your experience when you see the home that God has created for you. It will take your breath away. Number four, it's never ending. These days certainly feel never ending, but the fact is that they have an expiry date on them. COVID, which feels never ending, will end. One day, my job will end. The house I live in will one day become someone else's. The car I drive will stop working and come to an end. One day, my strength and my health will end. My name will be removed from my bank account. My tools will be sold or given away, and my life will end. Everything on this earth has an expiry date, but not our home in heaven. In our forever home, it says, He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and there will be no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. All these things are gone forever. But there are two more significant descriptions in this passage. Number 5, unique city home. Now, that can mean it's an undesirable neighborhood or it's next to an industrial site, but not when we're talking about heaven. John says, "And I saw the holy city, the New Jerusalem, coming down from God out of heaven like a bride beautifully dressed for her husband." John's best description is that heaven is a city. What does that mean? Well, I can tell you what it doesn't mean. It doesn't mean it's boring, because cities aren't boring. It doesn't mean it's lonely, because cities are full of people. It doesn't mean it's slow-paced or uninteresting. It doesn't mean it's simple, monotonous, or colorless, because cities are complex, diverse, noisy, textured, vibrant, and never stop evolving. Whatever this heaven home is, it's going to make our 70, 80, 90 years on earth look like a cramped, restrictive, dark, and monotone womb in comparison. This heaven home makes the ultra-modern Dubai look like Plum Coulee in comparison to its radiance, innovation, and grandeur. But the sixth descriptive feature of our forever heaven home is my favorite. It's about relationship. Verse 3, I heard a loud shout from the throne saying, "Look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. All who are victorious will inherit all these blessings, and I will be their God, and they will be my children." Remarkably, many of us read the real estate ad for heaven, and we conclude it's going to be one long, boring worship service praising God on our knees, and that's it. Heck, no wonder nobody is really excited about going there. But that would be like a baby in the womb thinking, I don't want to leave this place because I've heard out there, there's a school. I've heard all you do is sit at a desk, listening to a teacher and doing homework. But that's craziness, because there's recess, and there's field trips, and there's sleepovers, and there's birthday parties. You want to say to that baby, out here, there are scooters and video games and trees to climb and puddles to jump in and trails to hike and dance classes and science fairs and shopping and snowboarding and puppies and kittens and thunderstorms and rainbows, pelicans and penguins and polar bears, and the list could go on forever. It's everything your womb home isn't. But best of all, there are hugs and cuddles and kisses and words, parents and siblings, crazy Aunt Bessie because every family has one, and friends, dear, dear friends. Let's reverse engineer heaven for a moment. Revelation 21 says, look, God's home is now among his people. He will live with them, and they will be his people. God himself will be with them. You will inherit all these blessings, and I will be their God, and they will be my children. As a parent, the thought of sending my kids to a school classroom to sit at a desk and learn every day and every night, all day and all night, as the only experience they ever have is unthinkable. It would be cruelty and probably prosecutable. Because if they're my kids, they're going to experience adventures and surprises and stretching and growing experiences. They're going to go to places and see wonders and risk and try stuff they never imagined, because I want my children to have the full experience. And I want to be with them, watching their face, catching every expression of joy and fear and awe and curiosity and delight and astonishment. And what I read in Revelation 21 is that life in God's home is no different. It says that the uncontainable, most powerful and creative force in the universe will be with us. Not just as a baby in a manger or a man walking the dusty roads of Israel 2,000 years ago for a short period of 33 years, but in his unbridled, unobscured fullness. And he will be the one watching the expression on our faces as we discover the unimaginable creativity and wonder of God's forever home. So as we let go of the curtain and return to our gaze on this world, maybe the words we read from the Bible at the beginning are going to have a little bit more impact. 1 Peter 2:11, friends, this world is not your home, so don't make yourself cozy in it. Philippians 3:19, some people think only about this life here on earth, but we are citizens of heaven where the Lord Jesus Christ lives, and we are eagerly waiting for him to return as our Savior. Hebrews 11:13, you are transients, strangers and exiles in this world. People who live this way make it plain that they are looking for their true home. If they were homesick for the old country, They could go back to that world anytime they wanted, but they are after a far better country than that, heaven country. One day, our short time on this earth will be done, and every one of us, like it or not, will travel down a dark tunnel that has a light shining at the end. And the Bible's pretty clear about this. For the children of God who have put their life and trust in God in this life, there will be a blazing banner that says, "Welcome home." And in that moment, we will realize this life was only the cover and title page to a 2,000-page novel that lies ahead. And the reason that Jesus came on that Christmas morning was to gather as many people as would choose to follow him home.